Guys, it is that time again. I am currently camping, enjoying some nice, refreshing nature. But I wanted to bring you guys this video so we can continue to just talk about what has gone on Raw and Smackdown this week. Also, some things that we learned over social media last night. So let's dig right on in here. So of course the first part of Raw just recaps Night of Champions, which most of us have kind of already discussed. We then open the show though with Seth Rollins coming in out, making his first appearance as the WWE World Heavyweight Champion with that new title. There's streamers, it's a celebration, right? And AJ Styles ends up coming out, kind of interrupting things. But he's there to somewhat make things interesting, and I think that this was actually a good use of a SmackDown superstar on Raw. So he's there to show respect for Rollins and the match that they put on at Night of Champions, because they know that they each took each other to their limits, and it was an honest, good bout. So, this of course is ruined by the Judgment Day, which at the end of the day was the other part of the purpose of having AJ Styles there, was to set up the main event for the night, which ends up being Damian Priest and Finn Balor. I do believe I might be wrong about what two ended up being in that main event. So it was Damian Priest and Finn Balor. Okay. But we'll get back to that particular match when we get to that. But this is just to set up that main event, which is a decent main event. It really is. We then had the first qualifying match for Money in the Bank. It saw Ricochet taking on The Miz. And this ended with Ricochet picking up the victory and being the first one to qualify for Money in the Bank. Now, this does not hurt Miz, as he has been in, I think, several Money in the Bank matches before. He's won it, what have you. So he's at that point where he doesn't necessarily need it. So it's fine. And I think Ricochet will be fun to see in that match. And Miz may still get another opportunity. Every once in a while, WWE, toward the end of the build toward Money in the Bank, will offer another opportunity for those that did not win their qualifying matches to have a last chance qualifier. So we'll see if they go that route. They may not. We then get promos from Trish and Zoe Stark in the ring. They're going to talk a little bit about Money in the Bank. Zoe will have a qualifying match this coming Monday. But they're expecting Becky to run into this hole and hide. She does not. She actually comes out. There is a struggle there. Um, Eventually, there's the numbers game, Zoe and Trish versus Becky. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. Becky will have her qualifying match this coming Monday as well. I believe hers is against Sonya Deville. I don't recall who Zoe's is against, but that's okay. That's this coming Monday. So we'll talk about that there. We then had Indus coming out. They had a match. They're trying to build them up. They're just not really, I guess, doing anything for me. I don't know. They're not really doing anything for me. They're not really connecting. I don't think with anyone. Now we have Sammy and Kevin coming out. They talk about Night of Champions. And of course are interrupted by Imperium. This is kind of a fun little thing they have going back and forth with Imperium. But this is actually leading to Ludwig Kaiser and I'm blanking on his name. But Imperium is going to have a match against the Alpha Academy to other than Gunther. Giovanni Vinci. That's the name I'm looking for. At any rate, so what they're somewhat doing here is creating a feud for them that is going to kind of push potentially both Alpha Academy and Imperium into that tag title conversation. But what it is also doing is turning the Alpha Academy babyface. I don't know that it's fully there yet, but that's what it's doing. So first of all, you have Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, who are clearly baby faces that the crowd is behind, right? And what used to kind of annoy people is exactly what Kevin Owens asked for, and that was the thank you that he used to always do. This was a fun little match. Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens were on commentary, and they were having a good time at it. It was doing good. I liked their commentary through this match. So Imperium ends up winning this match. But I don't think it necessarily hurt the Alpha Academy at all. And it did help Imperium. So we then have some talk about the women's tag team titles, which is what we have up next. We have Raquel teaming up with Shotzi because Liv Morgan is currently out. We have Bayley and Dakota Kai, Shayna Baszler, and Ronda Rousey. And we have Sonya Deville and Chelsea Green. It was a fun match. It was not overly long at all. It did not have any suspense necessarily, I don't think, really, for it. I think it was pretty clear from the beginning that Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler were walking out the new women's tag team champions. But it was still interesting. It got these people again on TV, made sure we remembered who they are, gave them a chance to show what they can do. At the end of the day, though, I think we knew what the outcome was going to be. We then had Dolph Ziggler and JD McDonough. This is JD's first actual, I think, official match, which ends up in a double countout, which is interesting, and I do like this, partly because I know that Dolph Ziggler still has a lot that he can offer the industry, a lot that he can teach, while at the same time I think he realizes that his time holding championships is somewhat done, but he is now making a very good effort at trying to build up this new up-and-coming star, and he's doing it in a good way. This is a feud that is getting somewhat personal for the two of them, and it does not have anything to do with the title, which is somewhat what they need to start doing, is making use of these people, even if it is not necessarily for title purposes, but making it feuds that actually make sense. And I think that this is part of that. So then we have Cody Rhodes coming out. He's coming into the ring. Essentially, it came down to, he knows Brock isn't there, but he wants to know if Brock is satisfied with a 1-1 record, because he is not. So it looks like we are going to get at least another third match between Brock and Cody Rhodes. What that ends up leading to, we don't know. But more than likely it's going to end with Cody winning over Brock. I feel like as much as they want Brock to look strong, and although he's been a star for them, I feel like he understands that this is Cody's time, and being able to go into that third match and put Cody over is going to do a lot for Cody's career. And I think he realizes that that's the story, and that's what needs to happen right now. So we then have Matt Riddle being interviewed. The main point of this is that Gunther wants Riddle to win so that Riddle can challenge him for his Intercontinental Championship. We'll see what happens there. We end up with Bronson Reed and Shinsuke Nakamura, the second men's qualifying match, which ends up with Shinsuke Nakamura picking up the victory, which shows a lot for him being up against a man like Bronson Reed, but not necessarily surprising. It's going to be fun to have Shinsuke and Ricochet in this men's Money in the Bank ladder match. But again, that's not necessarily saying that Bronson Reed is not going to have that same opportunity that I mentioned concerning The Miz with that last chance opportunity. We then go to our main event, which is Seth Rollins and AJ Styles taking on Damian Priest and Finn Balor. AJ Styles and Finn Balor pick up the victory. This was, of course, after Dominic Mysterio and Rhea Ripley are thrown out of ringside. I do believe it's happened so many times that I lose track of how many times. Yeah, they are both ejected from ringside. Yeah. So that helps even things up there. Okay, so let's take a moment here before we move into SmackDown, because this is where a little bit of what transpired over social media comes into play. So Seth Rollins issued an open challenge for that heavyweight championship to take place Monday, so in 2 days. And this was accepted by Damian Priest of the Judgment Day. Now, this was brought up that one of the members of the Judgment Day would be bringing that heavyweight championship to the Judgment Day. This may or may not happen. Now, with Damian Priest getting this opportunity on Monday, and you know that Damian will not be out there alone. Whether it's Rhea, Dominic, and Finn, or whether it's just Finn, hard to say what it will be, but he will not go out there alone. And as much as I like having this championship on Seth Rollins, I do not necessarily hate the idea of them putting it on Damian Priest, who he's clearly shown that he can be a very great babyface and a very great heel. And he's very great in the ring as well as on the mic. So I would not hate for him to be the new World Heavyweight Championship, and I don't think it would take anything away from Seth. Clearly that feud would not be over and would not be left at just one match. And we'll see what goes on from there. But that is what we have coming to us next week on Monday Night Raw. Another championship match, which is great. Love getting those on Raw and Smackdown. So let's move on to SmackDown, where we start with the Brawling Brutes taking on Austin Theory and Pretty Deadly. I like this matchup. While I didn't necessarily see it as a possibility when Pretty Deadly were drafted to SmackDown, it's worked out well. And I'm not surprised that Austin Theory and Pretty Deadly ended up defeating the Brawling Brutes. At some point, I think they are going to split the Brawling Brutes. I don't know that that happens necessarily right now, and I haven't necessarily seen any fractures there for them. So I still am trying to kind of get behind Pretty Deadly to some extent and kind of figure out who they're trying to be. They are somewhat connecting much better than Indashir, so that's a good thing in their favor anyway. I don't like them as people, and it frustrates me, but that's part of them being a heel, so. We then had Paul Heyman and Solo Sikoa talking, and they have gotten the Usos banned from the arena for Roman's 1,000-day celebration. Right away, I called it that the Usos were somehow going to get into the building for this celebration, and they were going to come out to ringside. We then see the OC taking on Hit Row. That ends up being Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows, with, of course, B-Fab trying to get involved, and of course Mia Yim is not going to stand for that at all, right? Yeah, I like calling her Mia Yim. That's just the way it's stuck. I know they like to call her Michin Mia Yim, but that has not necessarily really stuck with me. Neither has Hit Row. This was a decent match. At the end of the day, the OC defeats Hit Row. I think this is just trying to get tag teams on the card to showcase them, position them a little bit in that tag team division. It really wasn't anything necessarily special. Next we have the Grayson Waller effect. He has Asuka out there. This all breaks down and was just a setup to bring out the women who will be competing for the qualifying matches for the women's Money in the Bank, which we ended up with just one of those, and that is Io Sky and they're not Io Sky, I'm sorry, Zelina Vega and Lacey Evans. So I have not necessarily been a huge fan of Lacey Evans, but I connected to her a little bit better when she had her Southern Lady persona going on. I'm not really connecting to this whole rendition of her trying to be the female version of Sergeant Slaughter. It's not connecting with me. I get that she's supposed to be a badass, she's supposed to be this heel, but it's not doing anything for me. So I was not upset at all when Zelina Vega picked up that victory and become the first woman to qualify for that Money in the Bank ladder match. We then had Montez Ford and LA Knight. They had a qualifying match. Interesting thing is that Montez Ford did not have his partner at ringside. As a babyface team, this is not necessarily a bad idea and not necessarily unheard of, as they would want it to be a more fair thing. I believe Montez Ford is going to do great things as a single competitor when his time comes to be done with the Street Profits, and eventually that will happen. However, in this case, LA Knight ends up picking up the victory, and he will be moving on to Money in the Bank. I don't know whether I like this. I would like to have seen Montez Ford in that match. I think it would have been very fun to see him competing in a ladder match, the way that he can fly around, the amazing things he can do flying through the air. But I think LA Knight will still be fun in this match, and it'll be okay, and I don't necessarily hate it. So, LA Knight is going to Money in the Bank. We then move on to our main event, which is not necessarily a match, but it is that 1,000-day celebration. And right away, you can tell as Triple H comes out that there is a new title. I don't know how they're going to play this out, necessarily. But to start with this particular segment and this unveiling of this new title, I want to start by saying that I really hope that they get rid of those 2 other titles. Because one thing that I do not want to see is Roman Reigns coming out to the ring carrying 3 titles that technically aren't necessarily really his. He really only has 1 now, and that's what it should have been. And they should have done this a long time ago when they unified the titles to begin with. So that being a unified title, it was 1 title, not 2, and now not 3. So we'll see where they play this out next week, whether he has just the 1 or whether they let him come out with all 3 of them. Moving on to the rest of this segment, because of course, and let's go back just a moment, because I do like the way that Triple H presented Roman. It was a little over the top, but I get it. It wasn't terrible. We have the Usos do make their appearance, which I knew that they were going to. Not necessarily quite the way that I expected it, 100%. So, Jimmy states that he doesn't necessarily hate his cousin, and he still wants them to be together as a family. But he wants to do it with mutual respect, which for a moment we think we're going to see. Because to preface this, Roman wants Solo to take a side. The side of his brothers or his side. And Solo acknowledges that he does acknowledge Roman as his tribal chief, but he loves his brothers, and he steps over to his brother's side, which is a ruse, which is going to eventually allow him to attack Jimmy. But I like the fact that Jay gets involved, because it wasn't until Jay started to get involved that Jimmy finally settled down and admitted that he did want them to still be together. Because at the time, that wasn't necessarily his idea. At the end of the day, Solo ends up turning on them and hits Jimmy with the Samoan spike. This was after a hug from Roman to Jimmy, and you think things are going to be okay until he says no and pushes him away. And that was when the Samoan spike comes in, and Roman and Solo leave. One thing that plants a seed, though, as to what is coming in the future for this is, I believe it was Paul that asked, what about Jay? And all Roman has to say is that he'll do what he always does, and he will fall in line. So, this plants that seed to draw the question, is Jay going to fall in line? Or is he going to grow a pair and stand next to his brother Jimmy and do what he should have been doing, what he tried to do back when this all first started and he had his first championship match against Roman? So we'll see where that plays out next week as we find out more about where they go from there with the bloodline. This has been kind of a captivating storyline, though, that somewhat has you on the edge of the seat as to what all of these players are going to do. It gets you kind of excited to guess and then find out, were you right? Did they swerve and completely catch you off guard? It's truly telling a story. So while there wasn't any actual match involved, it still was captivating and entertaining. So, end of the day, I do like this new title that they have given Roman. Hopefully, not that I hate the other ones, but I hope they just do away with it and give him just one title, which is what he should have. So that is this week's Raw and Smackdown and my thoughts on both of those. We will see you back next week. Don't forget to leave any comments. on your thoughts, whether agree, disagree. Don't forget to hit that like. We'll see you guys next week.